Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends and family beyond the binary, hello and welcome to week number 2 of Overwatch 2 here at NECC. My name is Warren Jugglegod Hammond, and tonight I am joined on the mic by Man of Class. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
I am doing amazing. And you know why? Because it's Overwatch 2, and it's collegiate, and it's new, and it's great, and it's awesome. It's a lot of things together. Honestly, I'm just excited to be here and to get to see what the collegiate scene has cooked up for us with this new game.
As am I. It was fun getting to open things up last week with Overwatch 2, and the excitement continues this week because Kiriko is going to be in the mix this time. So lots of new things to look out for there as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so many new abilities. I mean, it's a new hero, so it's new abilities.
Yeah.
But who is going to be able to play those heroes? That's of course going to be our lovely players. First match up is from the Champions East Division. We're having the Saint Clair Saints Academy versus Thomas Esports for Thomas College, of course. And well, look at these lovely rosters, Juggle. We got them right here: Apostle, Cheesy, Gravy, Grubby, and the Holy One coming in here for the first one from Saint Clair's Academy. But of course, they also got their opponents. But let's sort of look at this, right? Oh, well, switch over. That's fine too. It's all good. We could go back later if we want to, but let's just look at
Yeah.
this quick roster real quick, Juggle.
Yeah, we've got Jay Gibby, Cargo Tokens, Riot, Valkyrie, and Pranksters, making up Thomas Esports' starting roster here tonight. A lot of experience on this roster. We're seeing, several juniors, couple of seniors. So this is, I think, going to be a team that they've been around the block before. They understand what it means to be competing here at the NECC.
Yeah, and I also like, again, we always look a little bit like, oh, what's their collegiate background? Like, what do they study? What department are they in? Like, how did they meet? And you can see there's a little bit of variety here and there. Like, yeah, you got some computer science and cybersecurity like together, which is probably like a very similar department within the college.
Hmm.
But we get the forensic psychology in there, the business administration. There is a little bit of variety. I mean, you look at the rest of their roster because they do have a very large roster of subs and flex
They do.
in as well. It is a fairly mixed bag of that, which means there's probably a lot of good support coming out there from Thomas, trying to get the word out to like different players. And the enthusiasm seems to have been there, almost so that they might have made a second team, but they just stuck with the.
Yeah, no, they're this is, I think, one of the deepest rosters I've seen here at the NECC. I mean, I think they actually have, like you said, I believe they actually have 10 players
Yeah.
on this roster. So they can do internal scrims at that, which I think is just a fantastic thing. That's gonna, just benefit the players more so.
Very much so, and we might have a very good chance as well to maybe see some, subs come in throughout the game. Of course, they cannot sub within a map, but they can sub between the
Right.
maps. That's going to be great. And talking about maps, we got at least 3 maps coming between these two teams, maybe more. It's going to be a first of 3. And there's a couple of new maps, of course, in the mix. We saw a couple last week already because we have been playing already for a week. And of course, if you've been playing at home, you already know a couple of these. But we're going to be starting on Ilios, then bringing it over to Midtown for our hybrid, Circuit Royale for Escort, and if we're going to need them, there's still New Queen Street for push, Nepal for control. And in the very unlikely event we might get a draw somewhere, there is still Busan as the ultimate tiebreaker. But draws aren't really that common anymore these days.
No, they're much less common than they were in Overwatch 1. The only place we might see a draw here today would be in Midtown. But again, I think that's relatively unlikely. But excited to see 3 of the new maps in the mix this week. One for a hybrid, one for escort, one for push. It's going to be great to see how these teams really approach these maps, and if they're doing it the same way that we saw players of the Overwatch League do. And now, of course, there has been a lot of adjustments since then, but it'll still be interesting to see, if some of those principles, if some of those compositions otherwise still come into effect here.
Yeah, and some might, but then again, Overwatch League hasn't played with this Kiriko hero yet. She's new.
Right.
These
Yeah.
teams haven't really had a lot of examples. Like there was the Shimada Showdown going on in Australia, where you might have been able to see some
Hmm.
Kiriko play, maybe get some inspiration. But we're really going into a new territory here. Next week there's going to be a balance patch as well, so we're like in this limbo between we don't really know
Yeah.
what's going on. Like we know there's a couple heroes that are pretty strong. Like I am very proudly repping one of them, but also the one that isn't getting nerfed, by the way. But there are very, very clear heroes that sort of stand out. Like when you look at the tanks, you have sort of the front runners
Yeah.
in Zarya, Diva. Sometimes you run like a little bit of Orisa. You have seen some Tokyo Drift Reinhardt come along. Like there are a few options, but we really stick with the pink a lot of the time. And when you look at the DPS, there is a lot of Genji, there's a lot of Ashe, there's a lot of Sojourn, and the supports is really where this
Hmm.
is going to get interesting, right? Because you got a new support hero in the lineup coming out, and that can change a lot. And what is best to run with the Kiriko? Well, that is still up to your interpretation, and also what you run on the map, on the rest of the team. Like she can really is more of like she's a real flex support. You can flex into anything,
Yes.
and then you need to fill the hole that she doesn't quite fit in with another support, and that's going to be very dependent on preference, I'd say.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I've seen multiple different backlines just this week, watching Kiriko and Comp play in other collegiate leagues as well. So it'll be interesting to see, where exactly she slots in. I've seen her take the place of a Baptiste in some compositions, right? And that's had varying success, right? More so I think dependent on the team, rather than necessarily that being maybe a meta pick or slightly off meta pick. So I think there's a lot of room for flexibility here, right? She can go in a lot of different places. But again, she also feels like a bit of a niche pick to me as well. I don't anticipate seeing her in necessarily every single composition, every single map that we see here today.
Yeah, again, it will definitely depend on again on team preference as well. Like obviously, we're not talking about Overwatch League where every meta is like completely thought out to the very
Yeah.
detail, and everyone starts like one of these mirror comps all the time. There is some preference in the new maps, new game, just new season in general. There's going to be a lot of that sort of switching around, which also means we might get to see some, very interesting and very cool and just very wacky strats sometimes, and even some wacky like executions of certain plays. I already can think of a few on Midtown that I'm very excited about. But yeah, no, it's the only way to really know what they're going to do is by going in game. So that's what we're going to be doing in the very near future, hopefully. But that being said, yeah, like we said, there's so much changing at the moment. There's so much coming, and then we're barely getting used to Kiriko at the moment, and then in less than like a month and a half, we're gonna have another new hero, and it's gonna keep shaking. I think that's like the most exciting thing about this is there's not really gonna be a lot of time for these metas to properly settle in, and
Yeah,
that just excites me.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's very exciting as well. I mean, not much downtime between any of these changes. So it's going to keep everybody on their toes, right? The Overwatch League players here in Collegiate, us as casters as well. It's definitely gonna keep everybody on their toes, and that is gonna be very, very exciting to see how everything manifests itself over the course of just this fall. That's we're not even looking really into the spring yet and what might be happening there.
Exactly, you're right. And I mean, we saw a little bit about the Thomas roster. Like, it's very deep. We only have 6 players coming out here on the side of St. Clair's Academy. And 6, I mean, that would be the normal Overwatch size in Overwatch 1. It's not anymore. Now 5 is the starting
Yeah.
roster, and you have 1 flex. They do have 2 players listed as flex, 2 as tank, 1 as DPS. And 1 as support. So that does mean there's a little bit of flexibility in that back line. Not so much in the tank position. That feels very much filled. But that does mean that we might see some swap outs coming out between some of the other players. And it's mostly going to be Apostle and Cheesy going back and forth between who's playing that tank roster, depending on who's already there on that day. That being said, we're going to see who's going to be starting here and on what hero they're going to be starting as we go into Ilios. We're starting a Lighthouse here.
That we are Ilios Lighthouse. There's a lot of interesting opportunities here, and in particular, I think for Sojourn as well. Being able to kind of poke from the outside. We're looking at that high ground over to the right now, where you typically see a soldier post up, but I think a Sojourn there would be very, very powerful as well. But we do have a quick pause, so hopefully we'll get things taken care of relatively quickly here.
Yeah, looks like we had some lobby settings a little bit misset, which is fine. It happens. Again, new game. The
Yeah.
buttons aren't always in the same place where they were, so I'll let them get away with it for this once. But yeah, I mean, we talk about Ilios as a map, like you said. Sojourn can be helpful in some places. A lot of the
Two,
time,
one.
right?
Round one. Capture the objective.
Right? You do a little bit of spam, you right click a squishy, and that's like like you're done. You can ultimate, but that's kind of the simplicity of Soldier's gameplay all the time. But it's a little bit more complicated than that, especially when you look at the disruptor shots.
Right, and that disruptor shot already just kind of took that mega health pack away from one of the opponents there, so unable to take that, and now we've got it firmly under control of Thomas Esports. But the fight's starting to move down towards the point now, and Cargo Token's just doing a great job of maintaining their health, staying alive, keeping this pace. But in the meantime, that means St. Clair Saints are going to be able to take first control of this one.
First control, not surprised that it goes their way. They are playing in a competition that wants to play a little bit more, use the space, a little bit more close up, especially with that Reaper. You're going to be able to clean up this fight as well. 10% and counting as the team kill Hong Kong comes through. And that fight went fairly easily their way, mostly because of the way that they're able to control that space. Like they're playing much more in a way that they can sort of deny any attacks that really come their way with either Wraith Form, Dash Away, Deflect. They can jump away, have a bubble, Sleep Darts, Anti-Nades. It's really nice, honestly. And there wasn't really a way for Thomas to get on top of them. But of course, the only one is immediately going to prove me wrong because they swapped the Pharah.
Yes, they did, and that's going to create a ton of space, actually. And just about everybody booped off the point there by that concussive blast, and now Apostle getting burst down very, very low. Immortality Field has to come out from Jay Gimme, but it's still Thomas Esports firmly in control here. Grubby gonna try and turn things around with this Dragon Blade, but there's just too much support for everybody left on point.
Felt a little bit late to try and go for that Dragon Blade as well. I mean, it's a good ultimate. It's a good attempt as well, especially because there's not really any proper defensive ultimate in the way, other than maybe just the Immortality Field as an ability. But still, if you're the only Genji left, you don't have a nano on you, that's going to be tricky. So the nano boost now very likely going to go either on Apostle just as the Winston, just vanilla, or it might go on the Reaper of only one to get a proper Death Blossom off. Back to the Beyblade meta we go.
Exactly, and we're already seeing the Holy One putting a lot of pressure on the Thomas backline, but in the meantime, Riot is able to get 2 picks both on the support, so this should be done and over with relatively soon in favor of Thomas Esports once again.
I just really hope that we're not going to go back into one of those places where just one team picks fire and the other team does not know how to deal with it. But it kind of feels like we're getting there already. It's just really, really frustrating. I mean, it can be really frustrating sometimes. We do see Grubby switching over to Sojourn now, whereas she's not a pure hit scan. That railgun is a hit scan projectile. So as soon as the railgun is charged up, which is relatively easy to do against Orisa, like Orisa actually melts to most of what Sojourn wants to do, it's going to be technically very possible to just boop both Valkyrie and Raid out of the sky.
We're going to see the Primal Rage pop now. That in addition to the Death Blossom, going to delete several members immediately of Thomas Esports. Nice boop there, but a beautiful TP from Bookshelf to stay alive right there and keep a little bit of pressure on the point. They are going to be pushed away from it, but at this point, having a hard time flipping this point over. In fact, it's still going to stay in control of Thomas Esports.
Oh, it felt so bad for Apostle because they jumped off the map. They thought my work is done. We're all good. And then Bookshelf just TPs back over to the high ground, just able to survive that fall, or at least not get fallen in the first place. Apostle now goes over to the Diva, which is a good tool both against the Pharah and the Reaper. They do need to make it to point on time.
Yeah, they really do, and it's looking tougher and tougher by the moment as Thomas Esports has plenty of players on point. Nobody gonna be able to touch, and the first submap goes to Thomas.
Yeah, very nice swaps that they went through. Like that first fight wasn't going quite their way, and instead of saying, well, we're gonna try and keep doing the same thing, we're gonna use this Orisa as an anchor, which she's really good at currently, even without the shield. And then we're just going to run around them with the Reaper, with the Pharah, and they can't really get on top of Baptiste because he's going to be protected by Orisa, and Mercy's just going to be flying around all over the place, so you're never going to hit her without a proper hit scan. And yeah, that Sojourn pick came through. I think that could have been valuable had it been done a little bit sooner, but now they might just match it. It's like, well, if you're going to go Pharah, we're going to go Pharah. I would like to see that, honestly, but maybe damage boosted Sojourn would also be really nice.
Oh, and it looks like we might actually have a DC here. Several members, actually, of Thomas Esports, unfortunately, dropping. So, we're going to take a quick pause, see if they can join us relatively quickly. But
probably.
You know, one of the big things I think that I noticed was Thomas Esports just did a great job of neutralizing the back line of St. Clair's just over and over again. That's third and fourth fight. I remember particularly that being the case. So I think we're going to need to see a little bit more peel, a little bit more protection for the sports on St. Thomas before they decide to push in.
Yeah, it's looks like that's very much a problem that they're dealing with at the moment. That being said, you know, it's also, you always have that question, right? Like, do we try and be the team that like sort of catches the enemy DPS when they overextend, or do we try and sort of trade out, like do better than their DPS? There was always a bit of that question, especially when you talked about like 2016 early dive. You know, we had the Zenyatta in the back line, like, well, who's Zen's gonna die first? That's the team that loses, right? You should go after Discord orbs. And that sort of transitioned into more of a thing now that there's only one tank, because the tank kind of has to make that decision, like, where do I go? And the tank is very good, actually, at doing DPS, at killing squishies. As soon as you fight that tank v tank fight, you're kind of locking yourself into this stalemate, and your DPS has to sort of solve a problem you can't really help with. And say, like, ditto for your supports. So it's always going to be this question of like which tank can do that more effectively by like either denying the other tank while creating DPS and extra space, or which tank can just outright kill faster with helping their DPS and then peel back. You know, D.Va's very good at that, with like the U-turn mechanic. Winston, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Orissa's a little bit trickier like that because she can't really make that movement leap that fast. But she has some more ranged options, so she helps out in that way. Like there's always, again, there's so much balance in this new game, and especially that tank role is very interesting. And the job, who is going to protect the supports in what situation, also becomes a factor there.
Yeah, it really does. And right now, it's interesting. We've seen one of the major differences between these two spots in the support line is the difference between the Ana and the Baptiste. And that Baptiste is going to provide some more survivability to Thomas Esports. Not just their backline, their entire line, as a matter of fact. But then you've got that extra damage that you can punch in, you know, via Nano, by Ana. In the meantime, though, Apostle's able to find Bookshelf, so this D.Va swap looks to already be paying dividends for St. Clair's Saints, and they're going to go ahead and take first possession. Cargo Tokens unable to push forward onto point, and now they're forced to back up tremendously as Jay Gibby is still respawning.
D.Va always been a strong contender versus the Pharah Mercy, but even more so in Overwatch 2. More health, more damage, more boosters, more Matrix. It's just more of everything that a Pharah and a Mercy do not want to deal with in this situation. And Apostle knows exactly how to make their lives living nightmares. Already on 77% ult charge as well. Charges ridiculously fast. And who's going to be dodging a self-destruct in the air?
Yeah, that's a good point. They're gonna have to drop like a rock if they see that self-destruct coming out. Damage boosted Grubby now has their sights set on Orisa. Immortality Field has to come out as well as the gold. They're not gonna be long for this world as Apostle once again finds now a pair of kills, make it a trio. Apostle really seems to have found their footing with this D.Va.
These micro missiles especially so explosive. Like if you're using them on a tank, you're using them wrong. Cargo Tokens immediately has seen the lights, switched over to the K-pop star herself. Great swap again. Like it just works really well. And since they're almost running this mirror composition, you might as well try and like properly address the issue in a similar way. Soldier versus Sojourn, I mean similar-ish heroes, and the Ana Baptiste like a similar role that they fulfill. The anti-nades could be a little tricky, but then again, the Immortality Field's no peach to deal with either.
No, that's very true. There's going to be a lot of fireworks here in this fight, starting off with Holy Juan. There's 7-8 ults on board between both teams. But Tac Visor coming out from Bookshelf is going to start to turn things in favor now of Thomas Esports, especially considering they've got that damage boost behind them. But now Apostle trying to zone them out, keep them off point. 90% on the board for St. Clair's Academy. Even if they do end up losing this fight, which it looks like they will, they're going to be primed, and just, you know, one fight stands between them and winning the second submap.
Eventually, they will finally take down the last two members. Took a long time for them to take down Apostle too. It's a shame they couldn't remech. But at least the self-destruct got the Mercy, so there's a little bit of time where both teams aren't really able to push that aggressive forward. And that's a good thing for St. Clair's, where they can actually sort of regain position towards the objective without being pushed back into spawn as aggressively.
Yeah, that's true. It'll give them a lot more time to really prep how they want to approach this. But now Jay Gibby has used that Ant Matrix, and that's going to cause St. Clair's to back off once again. It's not going to do too terribly much damage here, but it is going to buy some time. Now we're going to see the dive coming in from Apostle. They bait out the Immortality Field as well. Riyadh going down very low. They're going to use their ultimate, but they don't find any value from it. And now Bookshelf and Valkyrie are out of the equation. Things are turning over very quickly once again to St. Clair's Academy, and nobody touches. That'll be them evening up the score here on Ilios.
Such a nice play, and Riyadh going for that barrage even though there's a D.Va in their face. They hadn't even seen the Matrix come out at any point. Fully ult eaten, almost goes down, and then it's a simple hunt for the Mercy and the Soldier afterwards, especially with the Oli Juan on that Sojourn. Just the right clicks all the way through the map. No damage fall off. Who even cares anymore at this stage? It's some would call it a beautiful hero. It's an amazing addition to the roster, but there are some question marks about those real guns, I will say.
Yeah, absolutely. They're brutal, to say the least. We're going to see both teams now opting potentially for the Sojourn. Riyadh taking a slightly different tack, going with Genji this time around. JKB on the Moira as well. So a much different look coming out from Thomas. They're going to see if maybe this could be the key to stopping this adjustment that they've seen from St. Clair's. Immediately, we're going to see Thomas Esports push back because Jay Gibby is taken out by Grubby. Grubby now turning their sights on the remaining support. They're going to be taken out as well. So nobody left to keep the team up and alive. This should be a quick fight win once again for St. Clair's.
I mean, you can already kind of feel like Thomas being like, oh, really? We're going to go for a Pharah duel? Like, okay, well, no, St. Clair's, we'll say. We didn't want to start this. You started the Pharah fights. We just matched you, and we beat you at it. So, you know, like, you know, it's honor, I guess. But, yeah, so far, Grubby has been such a menace for them in the back line. Like, it really reminds me of some of these EMEA contenders games where you just have the Pharahs from the Saudi Arabian region constantly being in the way. But so far, Grubby being pushed back a little bit. They lost the only one to Bookshelf, and it's just a bit of back and forth.
Yeah, one pick for each squad, but now we get a couple more coming in. In addition, Holy Juan is back in, and Justice was able to find the res, so a slight advantage here for St. Clair's, but Ried is starting to poke down from the side, putting a little bit of pressure now on Apostle, who has to back up from the choke, but Holy Juan is back in it, and they find a pick once again onto Valkyrie. This fight definitely isn't over yet. Despite cargo tokens being out of mech, they're still pushing forward. Grubby does eventually find them. Holy Juan pops their ultimate, but I think this fight is just about over.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's going to be going on for any longer, especially when the Holy Juan still has a railgun shot in the clip. We'll just try and get some more ult charge out of that one because their ult was already over, and we'll just start building up to the next one very quickly. We are getting up to the ultimates phase now for Thomas Esports, though. Almost got full 5 online. We'll take like half a fight, a little bit of poke to get there. And that could be a problem for St. Clair's, but they still have 3 in the bank. They're not going to be that worried altogether, especially with early picks.
Oh my gosh, Grubby able to trade out. Valkyrie is taken down. We have the Coalescence online as well. The res tries to come in, but they're unable to get it. Cargo tokens with the self-destruct kill as well. Thomas Esports doing a great job making a case for themselves in this fight. Bookshelf finding some value as well. That's going to be them holding on for at least one more fight.
And they did use 2 ultimates there, while Thomas Esports only really had to expend the 2 as well, so they're going to be in an ult advantage now. Maybe the full blade plus the Sojourn ult, sound barrier to protect them. They're going to be sitting pretty, but they still have to try and get Grubby out of the air together with Injustice. That is the real gun's job.
Yeah, it certainly is. And now Bookshelf has popped the overclock, seeing if they can end this fight before they even get the point right now. They're doing an excellent job of kind of maintaining the space and not allowing them to get an advantageous position here. Ried holding on as well to that Dragon Blade in case they need it. Lots of damage going into a pop. Point. That's going to allow St. Clair to start to push on the point a little bit, especially now that Apostle has been healed back up. Ried forced to drop back once again. And now with this damage boosted Grubby in the sky as well, things are looking a little rough here for Thomas. They wait a little bit too long to pull the trigger. Ried finds Gray, but Grubby and Apostle combined for 2. A lot of people low on St. Clair's though, so Thomas Esports still might be in control of this fight. Cargo Tokens does get the remech as well. Injustice getting chased down by Cargo Tokens, but they're not able to quite find them. They almost lose themselves in the well. Apostle is able to find Ried. Self-destruct does come online for Apostle. They get the remix. They turn the point back in their favor. Just 6% left to go. Jay Gibby pops the Coalescence to try and make something come of this. See if they can push on the point, keep some of their teammates alive, but Valkyrie goes around the corner just a little too much. We've got the Wrecking Ball swap as well from Cargo Tokens, but St. Clair's Saints just doing too good of a job holding on to this point, keeping control of it. This should be over as soon as these last few picks come in.
Not going to be much longer to round this round out. There it is. It's the round. It's the map. It's indeed St. Clair's Saints Academy will take the first map of Ilios away, and not surprising at all. They made these adjustments towards that pharmacy and then the Diva as well. Such a good swap. I mean, it worked out really well for them. And as much as I want to give credit to Grubby, I think the Matrix use and just the general Diva play that was coming out from that side was kind of really what made the difference. We saw it with the Sojourn ult there in the end. That was a really good example of showing what was going on, as well as the barrage that happened on Ruins. But that Sojourn ult, it has a cadence to it, right? Like, so you have to charge up the railgun back to 100. So there's like a cadence to it. And it's very similar to the cadence that you have between the defense matrices. So if a Sojourn will just shoot as soon as she has the next railgun, you can exactly matrix and matrix and matrix. So they identified what's going to be the target of the Sojourn, stand in front of it or next to it, hold the matrix up every time the shot comes out, and you basically block the entire ultimate. It's easier than doing it with a soldier ultimate where you have to like aim and follow him and do the thing. Or it's kind of ridiculous almost. But very good insight, and again, very good execution from the player behind the pilot seat.
Yeah, it really, really was. St. Clair's, they made adjustments. You know, one of the things I love that I saw about St. Clair's is they made adjustments and they made them quickly. Right,
Yeah.
a lot of times I think at the collegiate level, especially, we see teams kind of hold on to what their comfort picks are. Thinking maybe we can adjust our play style, which is absolutely an option. But I think that more often than not, you're going to find more value of proactive switches quickly early on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and the faster the better, especially in a game that is also moving so much faster. Like, ults
Yeah.
are going to come online faster, so you also don't want to waste that time to build more cycles. Also, enemy ults, you don't want to, if you're going to lose to an ult fight, you want to do that sooner rather than later without having swapped yet. And in general, just always swapping sooner is always better than later. I guess that's, give yourself more time to work with, especially in a control map.
Exactly, yeah, where time really is at a premium. I mean, you lose 2 fights in a control map and your opponents are already at 60-70%, right? You're starting to breathe down last fight territory, so getting those online quickly, it makes just a huge difference. But we're going to be moving on now to our next map, and that will be, I can't remember if
Midtown. It's Midtown.
Midtown. It is Midtown. Yes, we're going to be headed to Midtown. So this is exciting. This is a map that I think it presents a lot of unique opportunities for both sides of the equation, both attack and defense.
Oh, for sure. Of course, set in beautiful New York. Oh, well, future New York. Not current day, but there are still a lot of references. We got the modern yellow cabs. The fire department is very central to the first point. You got to release the fire truck and help the Omnic firemen to get to their station. But we talked about this before the stream starts. So there is this thing about Midtown, which is really cool. You have this like large train track above this bridge, and you got to like fight in the train. It's really cool. But then there's also this thing called the alleyway, which basically circumvents the entire thing and lets you just run to the point without the enemy really seeing you. Now, this has been fairly documented on the socials, on the line, on the net already. So there's a very good chance that people know about it, will be able to check it, and it's not going to be as big of a problem. But it's still going to provide a lot of cover that sort of, again, it's going to circumvent this entire thing. They're not going to choose to use all of it. They're still going to send the Lucio up, but they are indeed very safely underneath this entire bridge so far.
Yeah, they are. And cargo tokens now on the Sigma going to be forced to back up very, very quickly because St. Clair's Saints, they are pushing to point as fast as they can. They want to try and flip this map on its head and instead put Thomas Esports on the defense. Riyadh put us a lot of damage into Apostle, and they're going to be able to successfully hold on to point, but St. Clair Saints, they've already gotten 1 tick on the board.
Yeah, 1 tick pretty much for free. I mean, you give up a couple of life points, give up some old charge to the Ashe particularly, but on the other hand, you did get a tick. You didn't really have to work that hard for it, so...
Yeah.
I mean, is that the New York way? I don't know. I'm not that good at stereotypes.
It may be. We've got Apostle swapping Grubby as well, so we're going to go over to the Zarya. First time we've seen her tonight, which is maybe a little bit surprising just considering how strong she has been recently. But this is gonna be a different approach now that we see St. Clair is gonna take. They're gonna have to play a little more aggressive, pushing on the point. But already Riyadh has found Holy Juan out. So Thomas Esports with a bit of an advantage. But Apostle putting in a lot of pressure. They've already got another tick. Bookshelf finds one on Grubby. Is Thomas Esports, are they playing too far away at the moment? Looks like they will eventually win this fight, but again, they gave up another tick.
They have another tick, and I mean, I get what they're going for, right? So you get this high ground defense essentially, which is like you have shooting gallery onto the objective, which really doesn't have much cover. The problem is that if you don't eventually send someone to the objective, you are indeed just going to lose it out without actually having gained much. Like, they won 2 fights, they burned 2 minutes off the clock, so they're in a pretty good position to hold, especially with almost 5 ultimates coming up. But St. Clair's has not been sitting idle either, so this could be a very explosive fight, but it might not even take place. Again, if they just choose to walk to the point and get that last tick for free, might just be over before they know it.
Yeah, it certainly could. I think it's going to be on to Thomas Esports to play this a little bit more proactively here. Cargo Tokens does have the Gravitic Flux already. We see Bookshelf and Ried combined for a pair of kills. So this defense is going a little bit better. They are able to get the point, keep pressure on St. Clair's, and prevent them from gaining really any purchase, any kind of territory. And they do it without using any ults either.
I mean, no ults, lost, no ults gained. Grave threw their nano out there. I don't really saw who went on. I think they just instantly died. But what is problematic about St. Clair's approach is that while they keep trying to go for like this flank thing, they keep sending 1 or 2 heroes in like different directions. They just keep getting picked off because they're just so alone. There's nothing they can do to really save themselves. Good Dynamite does get blocked there by the Zarya bubble. But with everything else going on, the grab on the objective and a free Sojourn on the high ground, that's just gonna pick up kills left, right, and center.
Yeah, they are. Huge plays coming out from Thomas Esports. The grab was a good idea from Apostle, but it didn't do much this time around either. And now they're just looking at a pair of ults for this next push.
Well, so the grab was actually really good. Like, they did actually get a lot, and the Sojourn that was out there actually did a lot of damage. The only one did. But they just couldn't get quite the amount of kills that Ried was going, because he was like, well, everyone's down in the open, let me just tech price here and kill y'all. But now, indeed, they do kind of have the ult advantage, especially with that sound barrier.
Yeah, they certainly do. The only one finds a pick. This is going to be a barrage of kills coming in favor of St. Clair's. And in just the nick of time, they are going to be able to capture this point.
Turns out all they needed was the Sojourn ults. That's really what it came down to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit more nuanced than that, but if you get those one-shots like very consistently, and the only one was rating a lot of them, it is very tricky to fight against, especially even with the Sigma that can absorb a fair few of them and sort of like block things out with both the kinetic grasp as well as the experimental barrier. It's still tricky to just like circumvent all those shots for them. It's where D.Va kind of shines more with that Matrix.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Now, St. Clair Saints are going very aggressive here. They want to try and get as much space as they can early on. Keep Thomas Esports kind of fighting from the back foot here. Nice anti-nade hits as well from Grave. They're going to go ahead and commit the nano as well. Apostle finds a kill on the Valkyrie. Bookshelf trying to chase them down, seeing if they can just chunk away some of this health that this Primaling Apostle has at the moment. But not finding as much success, nearly as much success as the St. Clair Saints.
I'm not trapped in here with you. You are trapped in here with the primal raging Winston. I mean, it's a beautiful realization of what was going on there. Like, you have the information now with both the pings as well as your voice comms saying, hey, they're all in this room. They're all like taking their sweet time to kill me. If you come up here now with a nano as a Winston, you're gonna have a field day, and it just paid off really nicely on that. Bookshelf on the Reaper is gonna try and annoy Apostle a lot. Maybe even get a lot of ult charge out of that. And we finally see the Kiriko come out here from Valkyrie as well.
Yeah, we do. And already they're up to 70% of their ult charge, so they've done a fantastic job of building that. But it's not going to matter a whole lot for this fight because the advantage just firmly in favor of St. Clair Saints.
I will say, especially on a map like Midtown, especially on these type of points on the defense, Kiriko brings a lot of value, not just because she does a lot of healing and she can bring the healing of Fuda as well as the Suzu, where she just gets some invulnerability, cleanses you, but she also just teleports back from spawn to the fight really quickly. So like the respawn advantage that you get with that is kind of like tripled almost in value, just because of the speed that she can re-engage, as long as there's obviously someone of her team alive on the objective for wherever she wants to go.
Yeah, exactly. We are going to see Valkyrie, though, opt for the Zenyatta instead. So I think they're hoping to put that Discord orb on someone like Apostle, but with a nano on them, they are just doing a tremendous amount of damage right now. And the St. Clair Saints, well, it took them a while to break through that first defensive barrier, but they are showing no signs of slowing, and they've almost fully capped this map.
5 ultimates coming their way almost from Thomas. It's 4 for sure. The nano onto either the Reaper or the Soldier could make a huge impact right here. They already get Grubby out of the way, and now they're kind of free to do whatever they want. Ried is going to go down, though.
Cargo Tokens able to find Holy Wand with the Gravitic Flux. We're going to see a sound barrier committed now by Injustice. They're still going to push this, see if they can make enough progress to put this one away, but Bookshelf uses the Death Blossom to push back Apostle, and they are able to successfully hold on. Less than a minute here to go, Man of Glass.
Only 50 seconds on the clock, and overall, I mean, it's not been a very fast attack. They've kind of been, slowly halted, especially point A took a very long time to cap. Point B, not as much, but with, losing 1 or 2 fights here and there, it does come down to a low time bank. Now that you don't really have anything to push with in terms of ultimates, you only really got 1 fight left. This is like one of those Hail Mary situations. The heroes are more important than the ults.
Yeah, they are. This is going to have to be one in the neutral by St. Clair's. Thomas Esports has the Nano Visor out, and it is just melting through players. They backed off for the moment, but this is going to have to be a hero effort to cap this rest of this point.
They might have waited a little bit longer with the Nano Visor to properly push back, because now there's actually a chance that especially things like Grubby can touch on the trace. You see them blink from the high ground, manage to touch the car, and now the entirety of St. Clair's can come back, and you just gave up that ultimate combo.
Yeah, exactly. Grubby also finds Riet, so there's an opportunity here. Valkyrie pops the rally to try and keep their team alive, or at least what's left of them, as Bookshelf is out of the equation as well. Jake Gibby going down very, very low. Now Apostle pushing forward with a high charge Zarya beam. That spells a lot of trouble for Thomas Esports. And what a beautiful recontest here coming out from St. Clair Saints. There's just Riet left on point. We've got a few staggers coming in, but there's no ults online that can really do much. Cargo Tokens walks over to the Wrecking Ball, but they're not going to get there in time, and St. Clair's caps an OT.
Oh, Thomas Esports, are you a TV dinner? Because you looked so much better in microwave. That was a problem there for St. Clair's Academy. And again, it comes back down to that issue, right? So the Soldier and the Ana, they have their ultimates. You have the Nano Visor ready. You're waiting for this last fight to engage. There's nothing wrong with poking for a little bit. It's fine. You know that Nano Visor, if you execute it correctly, is going to get at least 1 or 2 kills, and then you have the fight net advantage. They are not really that close to a lot of ultimates yet if you've been ult tracking, so you know that you have that advantage. You know you have the ability to just outright win the map or win that round there, or at least not let them full cap. And then they execute it almost as soon as you see the enemy. They do get the 2 kills, but because the fights end so quickly, there's time to get back. Especially since Grubby survives. That was like the biggest deal, because that's the tracer that's the hardest to catch. If Grubby doesn't live there, or if they just wait like even 5 to 10 seconds longer, it would have been fine. It would have been a great ultimate. They would have closed out the round there, and it would have been great. But they gave them time to come back. Then the Nano Zarya comes through. You don't have anything in your own bank, and it's, again, you're just food for the Zarya. You just get microwaved the entire time.
Yeah, you absolutely do. Good showing there from St. Clair Saints, recognizing that, they have that advantage moving into the last point. But now we're going to see how well they can post up with a defense. Apostle staying on the Winston doesn't necessarily have the same kind of sustain or staying power that Cargo Tokens is going to have on the Orisa, but if they can get the picks early, it might not matter.
It definitely might not. We saw before, right, where where you hold on this defense is a bit tricky because of that full-on lower path that they just took and just went straight to point with the Orisa. Very good way of doing that, but there is a very good opportunity to recontest here.
There really, really is. It's going to be St. Clair giving up 1 tick again, just like we saw Thomas Esports do. Valkyrie does go down. Holy One able to find them with that secondary fire. And now, St. Clair Saints are just descending onto point and picking up the rest of the pieces that are left.
It's interesting to me to see like how many of these teams are running the Ana and running things like the Ashe, etc. Because there's a lot of these effects, like that anti-nade that right there on Valkyrie, that could be cleansed by Akiriko, but there isn't one being played right now, right? And that, your Lucio going down there is a pretty big deal. Yeah, JKB does a lot of heals, but the Lucio with the speed boost as well as the entire AoE heal constantly going is a very, very valuable resource that you kind of lost there.
It really, really is. Now there's a big advantage coming in here for Thomas Esports. They've got 2 picks online already. Cargo Tokens forced to use their Fortify, but they're using it to great effect. They're able to sustain themselves through all the damage coming their way, and they're going to be able to cap a little bit faster than St. Clair's.
A little bit's a bit of an understatement. I mean, it's like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes extra or something, because it was in overtime for St. Clair's. So
Yeah.
a very good start here, at least, to the map for Thomas Esports. But this is where it usually actually gets interesting, like this next part of the map. Like, how can you do in Street Space? The Street Space is very holdable for the defense, as well as the last point, obviously.
Yeah, it really is, but already they've got a crack in the defense. Grubby comes in with a pulse bomb. That's going to be cargo tokens using their fortify to not take quite as much damage from it. But already Thomas Esports got a good amount of distance. They're putting a lot of pressure on this high ground as well, making it hard for St. Clair's to stay there. But Apostle dives in. They've got the Primal Rage. They've tried to take out Bookshelf. They're able to do it. Now they've got their sights set on the rest of the team. And they're unable to really gain any kind of positional advantage here. And with that, St. Clair's able to find a nice hold right here.
Immortality Field seems to have been a problem there. JKB just constantly putting them down in a very sort of tricky spot to get to for the rest of the team. But it also kind of had to do with the fact where St. Clair's chose to take a damage. See, I was hoping teams would start taking advantage of this area, because the high ground above the tunnel where they enter, you can stand on that too. And I really want to see like a Reaper just stand on top of there and just drop down in the enemy team, like a Winston, a tank, anything really, because it's such a good flank position. And you can really properly surround the team entering there.
Yeah, it really is. Now we're gonna see the overclock popped in response to the amplification matrix. It's gonna be St. Clair Saints though, forced back just a little bit despite a lot of damage coming in. Grubby going down low. They tried a pulse bomb, but it was beautifully in by Cargo Tokens, who pops their ultimate, dealing a lot of damage in. Riyadh able to finish off Injustice now. Thomas Esports, they're down their main tank, but they're still up in the kill feed, so they're gonna be able to continue to push.
The hungry Orisa eats another pulse bomb, another ultimate going to waste there, unfortunately. And St. Clair's, they've been very lackluster and very aggressive with their ultimate usage. They kind of come out, I wouldn't say they come out on cooldown, it's not that bad, but they are using them a lot, trying to win fights, trying to clutch back fights. And Thomas is being so conservative. They keep having so much in the bank in these situations.
Yeah, they really do. We're going to hear another overclock coming in, this time from Bookshelf. Cargo Tokens has found a pick. Riyadh with the Death Blossom as well. They will go down, but not before they do a lot of damage and just about secure this second point for Thomas.
That's kind of it, because if St. Clair's uses their ultimates so liberally and then doesn't really get a lot of value out of them, Thomas gets to combine these DPS ultimates that normally you might use like two separate fights, because they know that they're going to be able to keep up with the ult charge of St. Clair's, or at least mostly, and be more efficient while they're doing so. So St. Clair's, looking at their ultimates, they got to be a little bit more conservative, and a Graviton on its own could just win a fight, but they might just combine it with Grubby's pulse bomb again. They might try.
A nice anti-nade comes in from Grave to push back against Thomas Esports a little bit, but they're able to weather that storm pretty well. And in fact, Cargo Tokens able to take, or rather Apostle able to take Cargo Tokens out of the fight. They might not necessarily need to use any ults to win this one.
Oh, definitely not. If they were using ultimate now, then you can really tell them they just want to use them as fast as possible. It's which again, it's a strategy, right? Like, especially because of the way Overwatch do, like the pace is so much higher, you're gonna get your ultimates faster, especially as a DPS, and even as a tank as well. But it's still a tricky choice to make.
Yeah, it really is. Holy Juan coming out now once again with the overclock. But most of Thomas Esports just opts to kind of hide from it. So not a whole lot of value gotten from that. Maybe a little bit of time burnt off. Now Grubby going to be looking for somebody in the backline with this pulse bomb. Sound barrier comes in. They still commit the pulse bomb. It's not going to do a whole lot this time around. Holy Juan, though, does find Riyadh. Cargo Tokens pushing forward, but they're not going to get a whole lot because, again, the lion's share of the kills going the way of St. Clair's.
Gibby just used their ultimate. Sorry, not Gibby. The only one just used their ultimate. Already on 60%. And that's the power of playing Sojourn against an Orisa. Orisa has basically nothing to stop Sojourn from what she wants to do. It's a very easy target to spam, and the headshots just keep on coming. It's very hard to play Orisa against a Sojourn. And then there's also a Zarya that has a Lucio that speeds her into you. If she's high charge, she just melts through you. Because again, you have nothing to block anything she does.
Oh wow, Grubby finds Bookshelf though. Another early opportunity, early advantage coming in for St. Clair's. Cargo Tokens already forced to use their Fortify, so that's off the table now. But they're putting a lot of pressure now onto the Tracer, force them back just a little bit. Now Apostle starting to push forward, trying to get a little bit more charge on that beam. They're only at 40% at the moment, so it's good damage, but it's not great damage yet. Meanwhile, the Holy Wand up to 95% on that ultimate.
He's got it.
They're taken out. Yeah, they're taken out by Jay Gibby. Now, this is anybody's fight right here. We are going to get the Nano committed to Apostle. Here comes the Terra Search again from Cargo Tokens. Doesn't find a whole lot, but maybe I got to take that back as Grave is out of the fight. This could go either way.
But if it goes either way, then you know it's going to be Defender's advantage because they got the spawn. They'll be closer to the end. Will eventually take down the Holy One, but there's still Apostle with the Graviton. Apostle still on high charge. They're gonna have to run. You can't play against this. It's not like Overwatch 1 where you can sort of try and 1v1 Azaria's DPS. It's not happening. And she's gonna Lucio too. She'll be fast. She'll be furious. Gonna take you out every time, every day of the week. And again, they got their graph ready, but you can see 4 ultimates coming on Thomas, and St. Clair's is running empty. These ultimates need to be used very efficiently, but it is last fight.
It is last fight, so Apostle, this grab has to be huge. Nade has to be used by Jay Gibby pretty early. Here comes the Graviton Surge now. Can they find what they need? Holy Wand has taken out Valkyrie. That's going to be 2 down now for Thomas Esports. Just a couple seconds remaining and nobody on the card. Riyad with a last-ditch effort able to trigger overtime, but I don't think anybody's going to follow it up. And St. Clair Saints, they take this series to 2-0. They are on match point.
Team kill, gong, and a confirmation quick. And you saw it again. We saw it already on Ilios. Again, we see it for St. Clair's, the adaption. No, they adapt very nicely to what they're sort of being run at with. The Orisa especially has just been a problem for them. What do we pick against Orisa? What can Orisa deal with? It's a microwave beam that just melts through you. It's like it sounds so simple when we say it, right? But you still need to make the decision as a team. You need to be confident that you can actually pull through, because by that time the card had pushed very far already. So you need to be confident that whatever happens, it's going to be just a problem essentially. That being said, it's not like Thomas didn't try. Like, they did adapt a little bit, but it does seem that especially like this tank department, that is where this difference is being made a lot of the time.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit more flexibility coming out from the St. Clair Saints. They're we talked about it before. They're willing to make the swaps pretty proactively, but in addition, I think we've really only seen Sigma and Orisa come out so far from the other side. I mean,
we've seen D.Va on the previous map.
Oh, we did see D.Va. D.Va.
Yeah, I don't think they tried to play Junker Queen yet. But it's been fairly limited so far. Again, we did talk about it before the first map. The tank pool is like, in terms of like what's viable, it is fairly limited. You talk about like sort of optimized picks, so you are going to that Orisa, D.Va, Zarya corner very quickly, and Winston, of course, also variable. And a lot of the time you have sort of this rock paper scissors thing going on, where D.Va's really good, but then Zarya is better against D.Va. But then Winston's really good against Zarya. But then Orisa can sometimes really work on a map if you have a certain strat, like if you just want to run to point A on Midtown. Then so there's all these different things that are going on constantly as a tank that you have to swap off. And that's also been like the problem that you've seen around the scene so far. It's also why some of these heroes are getting nerfed next week. It's just how it is. But we do also see that we do see that flexibility being at least somewhat necessary sometimes, because while it is a limited pool, it's still a pool that has some sort of rock paper scissors thing going on.
Yeah, you're right. Despite there being 8, 9 tanks now in the game, but really only 4, maybe 5.
Count them on one hand.
Really, really viable. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And look, as long as we don't see Doomfist, I think I'm okay with whatever we see. Just in terms of like how you can make them work sometimes, and how other teams might sometimes not be able to deal with it. Like even a Roadhog, if he's not being properly shut down or like dodged at least, you're gonna have a lot of trouble with the Roadhog, especially if he doesn't go for that tank 1v1. Like if you keep going for the squishies, constantly hooking supports, hooking DPS, you're gonna have a lot of downtime for those heroes. They're gonna get ults up as much. They're not gonna be a threat in fights as much. So at that point, the other tank also becomes a lot more vulnerable. But again, that's Roadhog. That's if you land the hooks, if the other team doesn't really know how to deal with it, then it becomes like a fire problem. You know, like how do you deal with it? Well, just deal with it. It's not that hard, but apparently it is sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that could be said. A similar thing could be said for Orisa as well. Like you can.
True.
One of the ways that you can deal with Orisa is to just leave her for last, right? Pick off the rest of the team around her, and like we said before, she doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of defensive capabilities for the team, right? She's very sustainable on her own. And that's how she gets a lot of her value. So if you're able to just pick off who's around her, then you can find a lot of success.
Yeah, exactly. As we go to the third map, potentially the last map in the series, Circuit Royale. We're going to go with Circuit Royal. I don't think that will ever be accepted in my mind. It's in Monaco, after all. And the predominant language there is French, so they would probably not be happy hearing that. That being said, though, St. Clair is currently up at a 2-0. They're going to start on attack, so they have a little bit of a luxury of seeing what's going to be on defense. How do we play against this? In the early time of Overwatch 2, this was a very Widow-centric map. Like, very strong hero to play here because of the long sight lines. If you hit the shots, almost unbeatable, essentially. But since Overwatch 2 has evolved a little bit, since players have evolved, since, comps and metas and everything have been involved, we've seen some other picks come out. We've seen some other metas evolve, and Widow not really working for the entire map a lot of the time. So a lot of times, teams sort of just opt not to go with that Widowmaker. And then instead, we're going to see Sojourners on both sides, and Zaryas, and Ana's. It's going to be great.
Yeah, and I'm actually a little bit surprised that we're not seeing a Sigma here. We saw, I believe it was Thomas play Sigma earlier, and they can be very, very strong here. But it's going to be Riad who opens things up initially. Bookshelf following up with a nice kill from that secondary fire once again. So this defense looking pretty strong for the moment.
You can already see the spy checks going on. They don't want to get hacked by the Sombra. They're looking around. They don't want that extra 40% damage boost on them as soon as they're hacked by the Sombra herself. But in these environments where it's more organized, she's not going to be able to do it on her own. She needs the rest of her team with her. She needs to be able to rely on not being the only target focused. And that's going to be the trickiest part because they need to get around this corner. And so far, that's not really working out.
I know. Bookshelf and Riad doing a great job of holding the space and just picking off anybody who